Hey, what's up everybody, it's your boy T, and welcome back to the channel. Now look, we all know that when you hear the words South Africa and corruption in the same sentence, it's usually not a surprise. It's like hearing America and school shootings tragic, but you're not shocked. But what happens when the very people meant to uphold the law, the ones in the fancy robes and wigs who say things like objection, and I rest my case, are the ones breaking it? That's a whole different level of spicy, my friends. It's like finding out your dietitian has been sneaking Coke Sisters at 3 a.m. Today we're not just dipping our toes in the water, we're diving headfirst into the deep, murky waters of the South African legal system. We're counting down the top 10 most corrupt, or at the very least most controversial lawyers in South Africa. These are stories that shake the very foundation of justice. When the referees are playing for the other team, the entire game is rigged, it erodes public trust, right? Suddenly the law isn't a shield for the innocent, it's a weapon for the powerful and the connected. It means justice can be bought, sold, and traded like a commodity. So buckle up, we're gonna name names, we're going to look at the cases, and we're going to unpack the scandals that have had the nation talking, whispering, and sometimes shouting in frustration. This isn't just about gossip, it's about understanding how the system that's supposed to protect us can sometimes be its own worst enemy. We're going to explore the drama, the politics, and the sheer audacity of it all. Let's get into it. Alright, let's kick things off with a name that, if you follow South African news, you've definitely heard. Coming in at number 10, we have advocate Nomgcobo Jiba. Now Jiba wasn't just any lawyer. She climbed the ladder to become the Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions. That's a big deal. That's like being the vice principal of the entire country's legal homework. You're supposed to be the one making sure everyone else is following the rules, not the one the principal keeps calling into his office. But her time at the National Prosecuting Authority, or NPA, was less about prosecuting and more about, well, drama. Her story is a tangled web of high-profile cases and political maneuvering. Think of the most controversial political sagas in recent Mzansi history, and you'll likely find her name floating around nearby. She was accused of protecting powerful, politically connected individuals, most notably the former crime intelligence boss, Richard Mzwanele. The allegations were that she basically put the brakes on his prosecution for fraud and corruption. It's like being a traffic cop who only pulls over bicycles while letting speeding trucks fly by because you know the driver. It just doesn't look good, you know? The courts did not take kindly to this, not at all. The judiciary in some refreshingly blunt moments came down on her hard. The Supreme Court of Appeal once described her conduct as not worthy of an advocate. That's the legal equivalent of your mom saying she's not angry, just disappointed, but in a way that's a million times worse. She was criticized for her handling of the case against Johan Boysen, the former KZN Hawks boss, in what became known as the Cato Manor Death Squad case. The courts found that her decision to charge him was baseless and politically motivated. This pattern of questionable decisions eventually led to multiple inquiries into her fitness to hold office. She was suspended, then fired, then she fought it, then there were more court cases. It became a whole saga. The Nomgcobo inquiry, which was set up specifically to look into her and another advocate we'll meet later, found that she had compromised her integrity and was not fit for her role. It was a stunning fall from grace for someone who held one of the most powerful legal positions in the country, a clear example of how political influence can seep into the very heart of the justice system. Ultimately, her career at the NPA ended not with a bang, but with a series of damning court rulings and inquiry findings. President Cyril Ramaphosa officially gave her the boot in 2019, citing the Nomgcobo inquiry's recommendations. Her story serves as a massive, flashing red warning light about what happens when the lines between political loyalty and legal duty become blurred. It's a cautionary tale that shows that even the highest-ranking officials are not above the law they are sworn to uphold. Coming in at number 9, we have a man who was often mentioned in the same breath as our number 10, advocate Nomgcobo Jiba. Meet advocate Lawrence Mrwebi. He was the head of the NPA's Specialized Commercial Crime Unit, which sounds very important, doesn't it? It's the unit that's supposed to go after the big fish, the white-collar criminals, the guys who steal with a pen instead of a gun. But Mrwebi became famous not for the cases he won, but for the one massive case he decided to drop. It's like being a world-famous chef known only for the one dish you refuse to cook. His signature move, the one that got him into all the hot water, was his decision to withdraw the corruption charges against the former crime intelligence boss, Richard Mdluli. Yes, the same Mdluli from the Jiba story. It seems Mdluli was the get-out-of-jail-free card for a few people's careers. Mrwebi's reasoning for dropping the charges was, to put it mildly, flimsy. So flimsy, in fact, that the courts later tore it to shreds, calling his decision illegal and irrational. This wasn't just a simple mistake, it was a decision that reeked of political interference. Just like Jiba, Mrwebi faced a long and winding road of legal battles to justify his actions. He was dragged before the courts, subjected to inquiries, and his professional conduct was placed under a microscope. The General Counsel of the Bar even applied to have him struck from the role of advocates, which is the ultimate punishment for a lawyer. It's like having your pilot's license revoked because you kept trying to land on the highway. For a while he was indeed struck off, a massive blow to his career and reputation. The Ngcukaitobi inquiry, the same one that looked into Jiba, also had a lot to say about Mrwebi. The findings were not pretty. The inquiry concluded that he had acted without integrity, had brought the NPA into disrepute, and was not fit to hold office. It painted a picture of a man who had failed in his fundamental duty to prosecute without fear or favor. He was seen as someone who bowed to external pressures, sacrificing justice for expediency or something far more sinister. It was a complete betrayal of the trust placed in him. Like his colleague Jiba, Mrwebi was ultimately fired by President Ramaphosa based on the inquiry's findings. His story is a classic case study in the capture of state institutions. It shows how a single, powerful individual in a key position can derail the course of justice, protecting the powerful and undermining the rule of law. The saga of Lawrence Mrwebi is a stark reminder that the fight against corruption often has to start with the very people assigned to lead that fight. At number 8, we have a man who is a master of many trades and seemingly a master of controversy. Advocate Mzwanele Manyi. Now you might know him better as a businessman, a former government spokesperson, or the one-time owner of news channel An 7 and the New Age newspaper which he famously acquired from the Gupta family. Yes, those Guptas. That transaction alone should tell you we're heading into some turbulent territory. It's like your friend telling you he just bought a used car from a guy named Dodgy Dave. You just know there's more to the story. While Manyi is an admitted advocate, his most significant controversies stem from his deep entanglement with the state capture project. His name appeared time and time again during the Zondo Commission into state capture. He was the face of what many saw as a propaganda machine, using his media platforms to defend the Guptas and former President Jacob Zuma, while attacking their critics. He became the very definition of a political spin doctor. But the spin was so fast it threatened to fly off its axis. The allegations against him are less about courtroom corruption and more about the systemic corruption that hollowed out state institutions. He was accused of using his position and influence to benefit the Gupta family's business interests. For example, during his time as Director General of the Government Communication and Information System, or GCIS, there were serious questions raised about the channeling of government advertising revenue to the Gupta-owned media outlets. It was a "you scratch my back, I'll advertise on your back" kind of situation, allegedly. The Zondo Commission didn't hold back. In his report, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo recommended that law enforcement agencies should investigate Manyi with a view to prosecuting him for fraud. The report detailed how he had seemingly used his power at GCIS to pressure departments to spend their advertising budgets with the New Age. This wasn't just about poor judgment. The commission painted it as a deliberate and calculated effort to divert state funds to his benefactors, the Guptas. So while you might not find Mzwanele Manyi arguing a case in court that lands him on this list, his role as an enabler and beneficiary of state capture puts him squarely in the realm of legal scandal. He is an advocate, a person sworn to uphold the rule of law, yet he stands accused of participating in a project that sought to undermine it from the inside out. His story is a powerful example of how corruption isn't always a dramatic courtroom showdown. Sometimes it's a quiet, insidious takeover of the systems meant to keep the country honest. Sliding into our number 7 spot is another former head of the NPA, Advocate Shaun Abrahams. They call the job of National Director of Public Prosecutions a poisoned chalice, and looking at this list, you can see why. It seems like every few years the person in that chair ends up in some kind of mess. Abrahams, nicknamed Shaun the Sheep by his critics for allegedly following political masters, had a tenure that was, to put it mildly, tumultuous. He took over after his predecessor was forced out, and immediately stepped into a political minefield. Abraham's time at the helm was marked by a series of decisions that led to widespread accusations of political bias and incompetence. The most infamous of these was his decision to charge the then Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan with fraud. The charges were widely seen as baseless and politically motivated, a move by the Zuma faction to oust a minister who was seen as an obstacle to state capture. The case collapsed spectacularly, with Abraham's withdrawing the charges just weeks after announcing them, leaving him with egg all over his face. It was a major own goal. This wasn't a one-off incident. His leadership was constantly questioned. There was a perception that the NPA under his watch was hesitant to prosecute high-profile individuals linked to the ruling elite, while aggressively pursuing their political opponents. Whether this was true or not, the perception itself was incredibly damaging to the NPA's credibility. The public started to see the institution not as an independent arbiter of justice, but as a political tool. And once that trust is gone, it's incredibly hard to win back. The courts once again had to step in. His very appointment was challenged and ultimately declared invalid by the Constitutional Court. The court found that his predecessor's removal from office was unlawful, which meant that Abraham's appointment was null and void from the start. Imagine being the CEO of a company for years, only to be told your original job interview was invalid, and you have to give back your parking spot. It was a humiliating end to his reign as the country's top prosecutor. Shaun Abraham's story is a lesson in the dangers of perceived political interference. While he was never found guilty of corruption in a criminal court, his actions and the subsequent court rulings against him created a powerful narrative that he was serving political interests rather than the interests of justice. His tenure left the NPA's reputation in tatters and highlighted the urgent need for a truly independent prosecuting authority, one that is shielded from the whims of political power players. At number 6, we move from the NPA to the world of lucrative government contracts. Meet advocate Barnabas Xulu. This is a story not about dropping charges but about racking them up, in the form of massive legal bills. Xulu and his law firm BXI became notorious for their work with the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. They were brought in to help the department recover 1 billion rand from a dodgy tender. Sounds good, right? A legal eagle fighting for the taxpayer. But the story took a very strange turn. The controversy exploded when it was revealed just how much Xulu's firm was charging the state for its services. The fees were astronomical, but the real kicker was how the payment was structured. Instead of the department paying him directly, a court order was obtained that allowed Xulu's firm to attach and take money from the department's bank accounts, including funds that were meant for completely different things like fisheries development. It was like paying your plumber by letting him take whatever he wants from your kid's piggy bank. It was highly irregular. The courts eventually caught on to what was happening, and they were not impressed. A full bench of the Western Cape High Court delivered a scathing judgment against Xulu. The court found that the service-level agreement between his firm and the department was invalid and unlawful. It also found that Xulu had misled the court to get the orders that allowed him to attach the department's assets. The judges used words like reprehensible and unconscionable to describe his conduct. When judges start using words like that, you know you're in deep trouble. The fallout was immense. The court ordered Xulu and his firm to pay back more than 20 million rand that they had already received. It was a stunning rebuke. The judgment basically said that not only was the contract illegal, but that he had acted unethically in the way he secured payment. This case became a symbol of how legal professionals can exploit government departments, using complex legal maneuvers to enrich themselves at the taxpayer's expense. It raised serious questions about the procurement of legal services by the government. Advocate Barnabas Xulu's case is a stark illustration of a different kind of corruption, one that operates within the legal system itself, using court orders and contracts as weapons. It's a reminder that the guardians of the law must not only be experts in its letter, but must also be bound by its spirit of fairness and integrity. The court's decision to hold him accountable was a significant victory for transparency and a warning to others who might see government coffers as a personal ATM. Alright, halfway through our list, and for number 5, we're going to switch things up a bit. This is where it gets interesting. We're talking about advocate Tembeka Ngcukaitobi. Now, if you've been following the other names on this list, you're probably expecting a story of scandal, corruption, and damning court judgments. But with Ngcukaitobi, the story is, well, different. He is one of the most prominent and respected legal minds in the country, often seen as a champion of constitutionalism and social justice. He's the guy you call for the big, complex constitutional cases. So why is he on a list about legal scandals? It's precisely because he isn't embroiled in them. His inclusion here is to highlight a crucial point. In a sea of controversy, integrity stands out. Ngcukaitobi has built a formidable reputation based on his sharp intellect, his powerful courtroom presence, and his work on landmark cases, including many at the Zondo Commission where he acted as evidence leader. He was on the side of untangling the web of corruption, not weaving it. Of course, no public figure is without critics. In the highly polarized political landscape of South Africa, taking on high-profile cases means you will inevitably make enemies. Some have tried to paint him as politically biased, particularly due to his work with organizations like the Economic Freedom Fighters on certain constitutional matters, like the land issue. However, these are criticisms of his legal arguments or associations, not allegations of personal corruption or professional misconduct in the vein of the others on our list. There's a big difference between disagreeing with a lawyer's client and accusing the lawyer of being a criminal. He is a prolific writer and a respected scholar, particularly on the issue of land reform, and his work is often cited in legal and academic circles. He represents a different kind of legal powerhouse, one whose power comes from his command of the law and his ability to argue his case compellingly, rather than from political connections or backroom deals. He has become a go-to advocate for some of the most significant legal battles in the country, fighting for and against powerful interests, all within the bounds of the legal arena. So, Advocate Ngcukaitobi's place on this list is as a benchmark. He serves as a control variable in our very messy experiment. When we talk about the lawyers who have allegedly failed the profession, it's vital to remember those who, by all public accounts, have not. It shows that it is possible to be a powerful, influential advocate in South Africa without being tainted by the scandals that have plagued so many others. His career demonstrates that integrity and success are not mutually exclusive. At number 4, we have one of the most recognizable and outspoken legal figures in South Africa, Advocate Dali Mpofu. You can't miss him. Whether he's in court, on a political stage, or on Twitter, he makes his presence known. Mpofu is a senior counsel, a former CEO of the SABC, and a major political player, most notably as a leader in the EFF. His career is a fascinating and often combustible mix of law and politics, which is a recipe for non-stop controversy. The controversies surrounding Dali Mpofu are less about personal enrichment or state capture in the way we've seen with others, and more about his professional conduct and the political causes he champions. He has represented some of the most polarizing figures in the country, including former President Jacob Zuma and the suspended public protector Busisiwe Mrwebi. His courtroom style is famously aggressive and theatrical, which has often landed him in hot water with judges. He's the legal equivalent of a protest leader in a courtroom. One of the most notable incidents was his clash with the chair of the Zondo Commission, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, and another advocate. Things got so heated that Mpofu famously told another lawyer to shut up during proceedings, a moment that went viral and drew condemnation from the legal community. He was also seen as a key figure in the Stalingrad legal strategy employed by Zuma, a tactic of using endless, often frivolous legal challenges to delay justice. This has led to accusations that he is using his legal skills to undermine the legal process itself. Furthermore, his role in defending the embattled public protector Busisiwe Mrwebi has been a source of major controversy. He was the lead counsel in her defense during her parliamentary impeachment inquiry. Critics argue that his defense often veered into political grandstanding and personal attacks, rather than focusing on the legal merits of the case. This has fueled the debate about whether he acts primarily as an officer of the court, bound by its ethics, or as a political operative using the courtroom as a stage. So while you won't find court judgments ordering Dali Mpofu to pay back millions in illicit fees, his name is synonymous with legal controversy. The allegations against him are about ethics, professional conduct, and the blurring of lines between legal defense and political warfare. His career forces us to ask a difficult question. Where is the line between zealous advocacy for a client and conduct that brings the legal profession into disrepute? For many, Advocate Mpofu lives right on that line and frequently crosses it. Coming in at number 3 is a man who earned the nickname the Bulldog, for his relentless, aggressive style of prosecution. Advocate Gerrie. For years he was the NPA's star prosecutor, the guy they brought in for the toughest, most high-profile cases. He became a global celebrity for his prosecution of Oscar Pistorius. People around the world were glued to their screens watching him dismantle Pistorius's testimony piece by piece. He was, for many, the face of justice in South Africa. So, what's a celebrated prosecutor doing on a list like this? It's important to be clear, Gerrie has never been found guilty of corruption. There are no credible allegations that he took bribes or was involved in state capture. His inclusion is about a different kind of controversy that often surrounds powerful legal figures. Because of his aggressive style and his willingness to take on powerful people, he has often found himself at the center of legal storms and has made some very powerful enemies along the way. His biggest controversy came when he was arrested in 2008 on trumped-up charges of defeating the ends of justice. This happened while he was the lead prosecutor against the then National Police Commissioner Jackie Saleeby, a hugely powerful and politically connected figure. The arrest was widely seen as a blatant attempt by allies of Saleeby to intimidate him and derail the prosecution. The charges were quickly thrown out, but the incident exposed the dirty political wars happening behind the scenes and the risks faced by prosecutors who refused to back down. After a long and storied career at the NPA, Nel made a dramatic move in 2017. He resigned to join the private prosecution unit of AfriForum, a civil rights organization that primarily represents the interests of Afrikaners. This move was hugely controversial. Critics accused him of joining a right-wing organization and privatizing justice for a select group. His supporters, on the other hand, argued that he was frustrated with the NPA's unwillingness to prosecute certain cases and was continuing his fight against corruption in the only way he could. Gerrie story is complex. He is not corrupt in the way others on this list are alleged to be. Instead, he is a figure who has been both a wielder of the state's legal power and a victim of its political machinations. His career highlights the intense pressures and political dangers involved in prosecution in South Africa. He is cited in controversies not because he is corrupt, but because his entire career has been a battle against it, and that battle has often been messy, public, and fraught with political peril. At number 2, we have an advocate who is now deceased, but whose legal legacy is inextricably linked to one of the most controversial figures in South African history, Advocate Kemp. For years, he was the lead counsel for former President Jacob Zuma, the architect of many of the legal strategies that kept Zuma out of court for the better part of a decade. When you think of the infamous spy tape saga and the seemingly endless fight against the 783 charges of corruption, Kemp was the man at the center of that legal storm. Kemp's inclusion on this list is not due to findings of personal corruption, like taking money. Instead, it's about the profound controversy surrounding the legal arguments he advanced and the tactics he employed on behalf of his very powerful client. His most famous or infamous argument was that the decision to prosecute Zuma was irrational. He fought tooth and nail for years, taking the case all the way to the Supreme Court of Appeal to prevent Zuma from having his day in court. This strategy was, for a long time, successful. Critics argue that Kemp, a highly respected and brilliant legal mind, used his immense skills to obstruct justice. They see his work as a prime example of the Stalingrad defense, where the goal is not to win the case on its merits, but to delay it for so long that it simply goes away. This approach, they contend, did immense damage to the rule of law and created a perception that if you are powerful enough and can afford the best lawyers, you are effectively above the law. However, it's also important to present the other side of the argument, the principle of legal ethics. A lawyer's duty is to provide the best possible defense for their client, regardless of who that client is or what they are accused of. Supporters of Kemp would argue that he was simply doing his job and doing it exceptionally well. He was using every legal avenue available to defend his client, which is a cornerstone of the adversarial legal system. The controversy, then, lies in that gray area between a zealous defense and a strategy that actively undermines the administration of justice. Advocate Kemp's legacy is therefore a complicated one. He was a master of his craft, a senior counsel held in high regard for his legal acumen. But he chose to apply that craft in the defense of a figure at the heart of state capture allegations, using strategies that many believe were designed to frustrate the legal process. His story forces a difficult conversation about the role and responsibility of legal counsel when defending clients accused of systemic corruption. And here we are at the #1 spot on our list. And for this one, we're stepping out of the high courts and political arenas and onto the football pitch. Well, sort of. Meet advocate Zola Majavu. If you're a fan of South African football, you know this name. He has been the go-to legal guy for the Premier Soccer League for years, serving as the league's prosecutor and handling their disciplinary cases. He's the man who decides the fate of clubs and players who step out of line. Now, why is a sports lawyer topping a list of legal scandals? It's because the world of sports, especially football, is big business, and with big business comes big controversy. Majavu's tenure with the PSL has not been without its share of drama and allegations. There have been numerous instances where clubs and fans have questioned his decisions, alleging inconsistency or bias in how rules are applied. When one team gets a slap on the wrist for an offense that another team gets a massive fine for, people start asking questions. One of the most significant controversies involved what became known as the Tendai Endoro saga. The case involved a player who had played for 3 different clubs in one season, which is against FIFA regulations. The handling of the case by the PSL's disciplinary committee, where Majavu is a key figure, was a drawn-out, messy affair that descended into chaos. There were conflicting rulings, appeals, and accusations of incompetence, which ultimately threw the league's standings into disarray and damaged its credibility. Furthermore, Majavu has faced public scrutiny over his own business dealings and past legal troubles, which critics argue create a conflict of interest or, at the very least, a perception problem for someone in his position. While he has never been found guilty of corruption in his role at the PSL, the persistent controversies and the perception of inconsistent justice have made him a polarizing figure. In the passionate world of football, where every decision is scrutinized by millions of fans, the perception of fairness is everything. So, advocate Zola Majavu takes the top spot, not because he's accused of grand state capture, but because his story represents something more common, the erosion of trust in institutions due to perceived inconsistencies and controversies. It shows that even outside of politics, in the world of something as beloved as football, the principles of clear, fair, and consistent application of the law are paramount. When the referee's decisions seem random, the fans lose faith in the game itself, and that's a scandal of its own. So there you have it, 10 lawyers, 10 stories, and a whole lot of drama. From the highest office of the NPA down to the football pitch, these stories paint a picture of a legal system under immense pressure. It's a system filled with brilliant, dedicated people, but it's also one that has proven vulnerable to political interference, personal greed, and ethical lapses. And when that happens, the damage is huge. It's not just about one case being dropped or one dodgy contract being signed, it's about the corrosion of the most important thing a legal system has, public trust. Without that trust, the law is just words on a page. The good news is that in many of these stories, the system eventually worked. Inquiries were held, courts made damning rulings, and people were held accountable. It shows that there is a constant battle being waged for the soul of the South African legal profession, a fight between those who would exploit the law and those who would defend it. The most powerful weapon in that fight is transparency. It's about us, the public, paying attention, asking hard questions, and demanding better from those who hold these powerful positions. So, I encourage you to stay informed, to read beyond the headlines, and to keep the pressure on. The integrity of the legal profession isn't just a matter for lawyers and judges, it affects every single one of us. It's the foundation of our democracy. Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Who did I miss? Who shouldn't be on this list? Let's talk about it. Until next time, stay vigilant. Peace.